Considering the 1859 Carrington event and NASA's declaration of a possible new one in 2012, and the developments in Japan at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, do you believe that America, or even the Northern Hemisphere, will remain livable if the United States is hit with such a powerful solar storm resulting in many or most of the nuclear power plants going into a slow meltdown?
Oh boy, complicated one. As a disclosure point, I was kicked out of Seattle University in my first year of electrical engineering for taking an electronic calculator to school in 1967 when everybody was required to use slipsticks. And I maintained at that point that I'm not going to bother my head by worrying about decimal points when I have this little tiny red LED thing that would do my math for me. But at any rate, I've had the misfortune several times in my life to be right, but extremely early on matters. Electronic calculators in engineering school is one. Another big one is the matter of wireless data transmission, which we pioneered at KMPS up in Seattle with a demonstration of broadcasting software in 1983. Again, really had the idea right, really was screwed up on the timing. And so when it comes to looking at the Carrington events and the possibilities of massive solar flares, I'll probably be right, but I don't want to be right. So let me begin with 1859. The Carrington event caused brush fires. It caused huge sparks along barbed wire fences, but it was primarily confined to an area, I want to say, from north of Chicago across the Canadian plains, and we did not have a high degree of electrical infrastructure to be protected at that point, other than telegraphy, which did get screwed up in a very wide region by this. As for the NASA outlook, actually it's not 2012 that's the problem so much as spring, summer 2013, which is based on a read of several technical papers that suggest that while we do have some risk of of major solar flares, including perhaps X-class flares Earth-directed, really the highest risk doesn't occur until after the very peak of the solar cycle. And so we're looking at probably 2013 and maybe even 2014 for those kinds of eventualities. And then as far as the Japanese power plants, and to a lesser extent all the other plants that require an operating grid in order to maintain safe, sufficient operation, the good news, such as it is that a higher, not high, but certainly a somewhat improved level of reliability has resulted from the National Commission on the Effects of Electromagnetic Pulses. And that commission report went back to the Anahuac explosions of H-bombs in the Pacific and went through some of the math and looked at some of the possibilities for those kinds of events to occur in the future. And at the grid distribution level, there is an awareness that if we had a solar flare or even above the Karzan or Karsman line at 100 kilometers, if we had weapons exploded in space at 100 to 200 miles up, as the gamma ray radiation from that hits the upper reaches of the atmosphere, We could have um, electromagnetic pulses. 3 of them is all it would take pretty much to wipe out the United States electrical infrastructure. And so the government has been slowly moving in the direction of hardening these kinds of resources. Uh, and while it's not a happy thing to think about, when one looks at the way the data seems to be rolling out into the future, um, an X-class flare or Carrington event type thing being responsible for the end of civilization does not seem as likely as this monster third wave, which could begin in January with a major wave 1 down in the economy, 1 of 3, and then have a bounce into Cliff's middle March kind of time period, which would be the bounce up, which would be 2 of 3, and then the long slide into an abyss, which would be the third of the third of the third in Elliott terms, and that's the kind of thing which would fit along with nuclear war, which would fit with the kind of long period of release language. You'll have to talk to Cliff after he releases the report and get him to speculate a little bit about what the qualifiers are. But frankly, severe global economic disruption, breakdown of confidence in global currencies is one thing that could cause the lights to go off, the food to get scarce, and people to turn crazy. But nuclear war could also do very much the same kind of thing. Um, I'm not a pick your poison kind of person, but I think, Ellery, that's what we're looking at. Carrington event, 2013, it'll be a maraschino cherry for those people with lights still on.
Okay, thanks, George. Pulling back from extreme levels of doom, we're going to hand you over to Green Meadow.
No. I have to say it's not an extreme level of doom. I mean, one has to recognize that if you've read Kurzweil and a lot of other books on how the growth of civilization takes place, it's never really even, and you'll get these major ups and downs. If you look at Kurzweil's book about the singularity, well, the singularity really is here, and in Cliff's data, one of the reasons he'll be releasing it this coming week is because the immediacy values like go through the roof. It's like so much novelty, invention, interaction gets so tightly tied together that it will almost seem here over coming months like everything is happening all at once. But there is a drill through to the other side that he's worked out, so we can actually see past these high immediacy value things, and gosh, think of it as looking past the singularity. I mean, if we get to this point where the singularity takes place, I think Kurzweil, while the book is brilliant, I don't think it pays enough attention to the role of capital in how the future arrives. And when capital or money or rates of exchange become wonky, then suddenly the massive industrialization, commercialization, virtualization of world stops, and we have to come back a little bit and go, well, that's interesting. Now what? Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt too much, but
no, that's quite okay. Appreciate your feedback, and there are far more alternatives than normalcy biased individuals would be willing to open themselves to.
Amen.
But, yeah, to take it back to something a little bit more conventional, we're going to hand you over to Green Meadow for the next question.
In the past, peak oil has been a hot topic, but lately it seems to have kind of died down. People seem to have adjusted to higher gas prices, or at least it's not so prevalent in the media. But But I think the breaking point is when truckers won't be able to break even and have to stop driving. We've kind of skirted that price, but then the price came down again. What are your current thoughts on the peak oil issues?
I think it's still a real issue. Part of our trip flew us back over the Permian Basin, especially down around Pecos, Texas, and that just this side of the Rift of Hills that kind of marks the demarcation between Texas, down the mountains that come down El Norte and so forth down in there. And once you get maybe 75 miles east of El Paso, you start really getting into serious oil country. And there are two major oil booms going on in America right now. One is in North Dakota, where there are billions of potential barrels. There are also millions upon millions, if not billions, down in this expansion of the Permian Basin to the south and west. The problem is the price. We're not going to run out of oil. What we're going to run out of is financing. And so, again, this is why peak oil is called what it is. Energy will slowly become, in my opinion, barring a breakthrough in free energy machines, and until I can buy or build one, I'm skeptical of those. Until and unless that comes along, we're going to see investing in energy as one of the continued greatest things you can do with money, provided there are people around to consume the energy. I would encourage anyone with even a few dollars to consider buying some 200-watt solar panels, because the costs are down to about $200 a watt. Now, it becomes an interesting speculation whether putting money in a bank or putting money in solar panels at today's ridiculously low prices will be the most meaningful thing to invest in the very short term. I mean, you can't trade a solar panel in for groceries. On the other hand, with prices, and I've seen some sales at places like what is it, Select Tech down in Miami. They've had solar panels with minor blemishes but still full output, for like 75 cents a watt. Well, that's crazy cheap. You can't run a car on it, although you could charge a car in a couple of days of sunlight. But compared to the return from putting money into paper, it certainly makes a lot of sense to me to invest in those basics like solar panels and seeds, and move toward personal self-sufficiency as best you can, regardless of whether you happen to be, condo farming. When I say condo farming, I mean, you have a deck in a condo and you grow tomatoes outside, or whether you've got a regular size city house and put a garden in and actually spend some time gardening when you're not working. Those are the kinds of things that really make sense. I haven't backed away from my personal self-sufficiency objective, I don't think, at all. I just don't think that it's a popular way of looking at things, because it's a hell of a lot more work, and it's not nearly as much fun as watching Idol on TV or something.
Yeah, yeah.
The food's better too.
Yes,